Ascendis prezintă Garantat 100%.
Salutare, bine v-am regăsit la Garantat 100%. Invitatul nostru din seara asta s-a născut în Columbia, a studiat în Franța. E un cercetător științific vizionar, e om de știință, e profesor la Universitatea Sorbona, e o personalitate marcantă a urbanismului, este creatorul conceptului contemporan de oraș de 15 minute. E o idee mai veche, o idee care a fost reluată de invitatul nostru și adaptată la ideea de oraș contemporan. Domnia sa se află în România la invitația prietenilor noștri de la NZEB Expo, cărora le și mulțumim pentru mijlocirea acestei întâlniri, așa cum îi mulțumim bunului nostru prieten Cristian Leru pentru găzduirea în universul lui. Hello, thank you so much for accepting this invitation.
Thank you for your invitation in this amazing place.
I know you've been asked many times, very many times, but please, for our viewers, can you define just in a few words the idea of 15 minutes city?
In a few words, the 15-minute city is in fact to live in a happy proximity for accessing to a lot of different services within short distances by foot or by bike or public transportation. But
So not by car, but by foot and by bike.
absolutely. We need to reduce our CO2 emissions in our cities, given that the relevant challenge of global warming in all countries, in all cities, including Romania. And the 15-minute city is in a way for reconciling, to reduce our CO2 emissions with this low carbon mobility on foot or by bike, and at the same time, to access to a lot of different services, and including for generating more local activities, local economy, local employment, to use raw materials, local raw materials, shorter circuits, to change the shape of our traditional city. Instead of the segmented, zonified city, to have this polycentric and more vibrant neighborhoods.
In words, it sounds very good, sounds very nice, sounds very reasonable, but there are some people accusing you of trying to implement a new concentration camp. Your life has been threatened a few times because of your ideas. Why do you think that some people are so scared by this idea of 15-minute city? What scares them?
Yeah. In fact, these people that have evoked this idea of concentration camps and others, it's the same people that in these dark times, unfortunately, have embraced the idea that climate change doesn't exist, or the vaccine for COVID, this is a way for controlling people with the 5G chips, etc. My best answer for this kind of question is just to visit a lot of different cities around the world. My first city, of course, is my city, Paris, and we could observe that we have a really vibrant city, vibrant neighborhood, open-air activities, well, capability by capability, cultural activities, restaurant, commerce, bars. For the Olympic Games, a lot of people around the world have observed Paris.
Yes.
And the Olympic Games were the concrete proof the importance of this concept for a city as Paris. We have our Olympic Games in all city, not in particular place. The whole city have hosted the different competitions. This is the concrete explanation of this concept.
How could you define or, let's say, describe the essence of the contemporary city? How different are cities of today from cities as we knew them 30 years ago, for example? What's new in the idea of contemporary city?
This is a very good question. This is in reality the essential point for understanding this proposal. 30 years ago, or 50 years ago, we had, in the 20th century, cities essentially car-centric. In fact, after the Second War, we have observed worldwide the same pattern of cities. The places specialized for working, the name is the corporate business district, the residential areas, the specialized areas for cultural activities, exhibition center, cultural center, and the commercial areas. And in these specialized areas, of course, for joining from one point to other point, the essentially means was a car. The individual car with the motor highways were the shape of cities. Our cities in this 20th century, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, were essentially for the modern centaurs. People half human, half cars. The essential difference in the 21st century, given that the impact of global warming in our cities, given that the loss of biodiversity, given that the massification of urbanization in just 50 years, we have even multiplied by 2, by 3 the people that live today in cities. We need to find a more humanistic way for having 100% guaranteed human in cities and no more centers, half car, half human.
Let me understand precisely. Are you against cars? So, are you an enemy of the car?
No. The question is not to be or not to be a car. The question is to use a car in the place where we need to use a car for just commuting from the point A to the point B. The problem today with car is not a car. It's the culture of a car.
Oh, yes.
The culture of a car is a culture for being an owner of this material element. To consider that we need impermanence to have my car, even in my living room, in my dining room. No, a car is just a material element for ensuring an activity, for commuting and no more. The statistics are very, very clear worldwide. The essential use of a car, the majority of use of a car is for the distances less than 6 kilometers. This is totally insane. Of course, we need a car for long distances, for maybe moving my fridge, for being used by elderly people, disabled people, sick people, but just for going from this point to another point. But this is not the case for the majority of cars. A lot of cars, in fact, they're really use time for a car is less than maybe 10% in a day, 5% in a day. But the place used by a car is the majority of the infrastructure in the city. We need to inverse this situation.
Really? Mr. Moreno, how is migration influencing the modern concept of 15-minute city? Or how is migration influencing the very idea of modern city today?
Migration is today the new human impact in cities. In fact, we can 2 or 3 different human migrations in cities. The first one, the specialized migrations. For example, students that have decided to migrate for accessing to more knowledge. This kind of migration is accepted for a lot of nations, governments, and are very relevant for cities.
And it's an added value for society.
For generating this cultural and humanistic added value. We have a second kind of migration, the people in the condition for find a best job, a best work, the legal migration. This is more complicated because we have a lot of different point of view. We need really these people for working. Maybe we could have a great French than to have workers. This is the case in a lot of places. And you have the third kind of migration, the illegal migration. The illegal migration by wars or climate migration as well. Our cities in Europe in particular are really impacted by the third kind of migration, the illegal migration or the migration after wars or refugees, climate refugees. We need, in fact, to consider the question of migrations in a realistic way, given that for the third kind of migration, we have today in our cities two levels for the analysis. This global threat, migrants are violent, migrants are dangerous, migrants are a risk. And we need to consider the reality of the numbers in face of migrations. In a lot of countries, in fact, the number of this kind of illegal migration is not elevated, but the image, the feel built around that, this is more dangerous than the number, the real number of migrants.
So you say that the public image is far more bigger than the real numbers?
This is the case in the majority of European countries, for example. We have, unfortunately, the focus point. We have the border with a lot of people that are arriving at the same time in this place. And these kind of images are totally dangerous for the global image because we need to dispatch people, we need to organize this management, we need to offer different
alternatives.
Authorities for considering the real impact in our populations. Unfortunately, for 2 decades, we have been living with this public image of migrants equal violence, migrant equal rape people, migrants equal a threat for the balance of our society. And the consequences as well is, in fact, to modify the mindset of people that live in a country, that live in a city, for reject this kind of people. I am a former refugee. I was born in Colombia.
Yes.
I was a refugee, political refugee, and arrived in France when I was 20 years old. I was welcomed in the very good conditions, and today I am a French citizen, and at the same time I wanted to contribute to give to my country, to my adoptive country, the best of my effort for recognizing this warm welcoming.
You're a very good example in this respect, because when you were young, you were a member of a guerrilla group.
Yeah.
Do you still keep any memories of that time?
Yes, of course. I was very, very young because this was my period for 5 years, 15 years old until 20 years old. And this period in Latin America was very, very complicated.
Yes.
Because we lived in all South America under the dictature, the military putsch.
Yes.
The very, very strict conditions. Yes. At this moment, it was always considered a suspect just to read the book. The great literacy as Garcia Marquez, the Nobel Prize in literature, was constrained to go to Mexico as a refugee. This is not refugee, as the voluntary exile, because it was suspect to be an intellectual. This is my essential memory of this period. It was really dangerous to think.
How can different cities, very different cities, become 15 minutes cities, as long as sometimes there are major, substantial differences in between the urban structures of the cities? How can different cities become 15-minute cities?
We have around the world a lot of different cities. The essential question for mayors, for stakeholders, for citizen dwellers, is to consider in what kind of city we want to live in. The 15-minute city is a response for guiding our reflection, for deciding in what kind of city we want to live today. Even if we have a lot of different cities around the world, after the Second War, we have the same pattern for cities, car-centered cities, the corporate districts with the long commute, the loss of biodiversity, and the humanization of cities. With the 15-minute city, we consider that we need, in all cities around the world, to offer, in a human-centered vision, 6 essential functions for satisfying our quality of life. To living in the good conditions, to have a house in the good conditions, not with the architectural and urbanistic good conditions, to access to local shops, local commerce in proximity, to access to care, medical services, well-being, to access to education, schools, high schools, university, cinema, theater, culture, to access to public spaces for enjoying without pollution, air and water, and to access to a job with less of long commute. These 6 functions, each one of a color, in fact, are the core of the happy proximity. If we have the real possibility for mixing this color in the different place, for creating this new rainbow of the high quality societal life, we will offer a better quality of life, and at the same time, in a polycentric proximity, we will reduce this constraint for using a car. We could have this mobility, low carbon mobility on foot or by bike. And this idea is regardless of the size of the density of the physical place of cities. We could adapt in Europe, in the global south, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, this concept to mix the essential functions and to offer the different spots for reducing naturally our CO2 emissions, for fostering the local employment, local activities, and for generating more social interactions in public spaces, for having more vibrant neighborhood. This is the core of the concept, the 50-minute city, 20-minute city, 30 minutes territory, vital neighborhood, complete neighborhood. These are, in fact, the different big names of this concept.
Who has to implement the 15-minute city? Who is responsible for implementing this idea?
This is the essential question. The responsible for implementing this concept is the local governors. The local governors, mayor of a city, president of metropolises, or the president of the region, the X-minute city, 50-minute city, 20-minute city, X-minute city, X-minute territory is in reality a new local urban or territorial urban policy for improving our quality of life in the sense of having a best common good. The guarantee, the 100% guarantee for implementing this policy is the local governance. This is very important. Why? We need to work with the private sector, with the real estate actors.
Obviously.
We need to work with the different entrepreneurships, but we need to have a future decided in the sense of the common good for rebalancing our cities, for fighting against gentrification, for fighting against a new gentrification. A real estate, for example, actor could imagine a closed condominium.
Yes.
For offering a best quality of life within this condominium. This is not the 50-minute city. This is the private actions for offering a maybe best condominium for inhabitants in this condominium, but this is not the city. For this reason, the local governance should be the responsible as the generator of the horizontal crisscross approach for federating the urban policy, for fostering the private sector, for having a new business model, and for fostering cities and dwellers for changing their mindset, because the mindset of cities and dwellers is a real, maybe, obstacles sometimes for switching towards a new behavior.
I'll give you an example from Romania. During the communist times, lots of people from the countryside have been moved to the cities. And I mean about large numbers, very large numbers. These people were people from the countryside who were supposed to become industrial workers. In certain ways, they kept their habits and customs from the countryside. And lots of people from the cities at this very moment do not have the idea of what a city is. There are many compatriots who still keep the idea of a common village.
Absolutely.
And the village is very different from a city. How can we negotiate in terms of urban psychology and in terms of urban understanding and urban communication these different types of people who understand the city very differently?
This example of Romania, very, very good example, we could expand for a lot of different cities, including in Global South and South America. We have a lot of cities in South America that have been increasing their urban population by this migration from the countryside. And today, the common point with these examples, your example in Romania of the cities in Latin America, is the absence of a new urban democratic culture. Urban democratic culture. The first point, urban culture. To live in a city is so different to live in a countryside. Of course, people that live in a countryside, the one have arrived in cities, wish to keep different behavior. But to live in a city is so different, given that our cities are developed these new constraints for having a job, for accessing to the education. This is not only evident for many people. These cities in general are more expensive that they live in a countryside when we're farmers, because we have the shorter circuits inside. This is no more the case when we live in cities. And the consequences are this more difficulty. We have low incomes, low revenues, the development of the informal jobs, even the underground economy. This is very, very frequent in this kind of settlements. This is not exactly the increase of real quality of life in this migration, because we have this intermediate new poverty that is so present in our cities. We need to transform not only these people in new citizens dwellers, but we need at the same time to develop a new idea of the democracy and culture. Culture is so important for considering that this is not the number of books that we have read in our life.
Exactly.
Culture is the first one point, the otherness. Our capacity, our capability for discussing, for exchanging, for considering the other one, for creating new relationships, for having a more friendly neighborhood, for regenerating this idea of solidarity, of the mutual care. The mutual care is very important in our cities, but unfortunately, in a lot of new places built by this kind of migration, the otherness, the mutual care, the mutual aid have disappeared so quickly. And people have become more isolated, loneliness is installed, and the untrust have become as well one of the new behavior. For that, I said, we need to create a new urban democratic culture. Culture is our daily relationship with another. And culture is to consider that we could generate new friendly relationships for just for having a best livability in this neighborhood. and to regenerate our neighborhood, not for having the same village in the other times, but just to live in the new context of the urban context based on a strong mutualization of a lot of different services. And the care, I think this is the common point for transforming this culture in a new urban democratic culture. The 50-minute city is a way for going straight in this future.
We might talk sometimes about a competition in between different actors. People have their interest, politicians have their interest, people from the business environment have their interest. At a certain moment, this competition becomes more or less, between inverted commas, a fight. It becomes sometimes a conflict. How can this conflict be mediated? Who wins? Because the power is not with the normal people. The power is with the powerful actors. Who has many chances to win the competition when we talk about 15-minute cities?
Indeed, our cities are a very complicated place for identifying the common interests of the different actors. We had this global picture of different actors present in the daily life. And several times the particular interests are in contradiction. For example, the mayor in a local governance, common good oriented, has a lot of difficulties with the real estate sector for changing their business model in order to being integrated in a more human urban way. At the same time, the normal people, citizen dwellers, are not homogeneous. We have citizen dwellers totally committed for going in a more peaceful city with a strong reduction of cars, more pedestrianization, more green areas. And at the same time, we have citizen dwellers that prefer to refuse this way because they consider to have a car as synonymous of freedom, to be an owner of a car is a social status, and they wanted to have the 100% guarantee to have a car because this is important for being important in a city. This is the global picture. With the 50-minute city, one of the political aspects for contributing, for clarifying this question, is to propose to mayors, to local governors, to political responsibles, to organize a horizontal discussion in order to elaborate a new local urban plan, a new strategic urban plan, or a strategic territorial plan, if this is the case of a metropole or a region. In the city of Paris, this was the case. Anne Hidalgo, our mayor, when she embraced this concept in 2019, before the COVID-19, the first measures took for implementing the 50-minute city in the common good-oriented way was to open the schoolyards during the weekend for offering the surface to neighbors. And at the same time, to propose to transform each one of streets in front of schools into a mini park. We have in Paris 280 schools. We have today 280 schoolyards open during the weekend, connected to 280 mini parks, playgrounds, equipments for elderly people, grandpa, grandma, etc., etc. This proposal, in reality, has a convergence of the different actors of the city, citizen dwellers, parents, even the stakeholders were very happy to have these new places in the city.
And the citizens are happy because they share common values, first of all, and because they feel in a very concrete way the idea of public space.
Exactly. The public spaces for all, for having safety for kids, for having a place for parents when they need to wait kids after the school. We have a lot of different available green points, yes, checkpoints, in a positive way. I give this example because this measure has today 75% of positive acceptation. This is amazing.
It's a lot.
This is amazing. This is so different when 10 years ago the mayor had decided to cancel cars into the motor highway along the Seine River. Mm-hmm. This measure was very important for reconquering public space, for reducing the presence of cars in the center of city, and to offer this public space for people. At this moment, this measure, it was very unpopular because the particular interest, the automotive lobby,
obviously,
the mindset of drivers,
yes,
the imagination or behavior of artisans, for example, they said we need in permanence this motor highway. This measure was very unpopular. Today, 10 years after, canceled cars in this motor highway along the Seine River have become very, very popular. And nobody wants today to return to have cars in this place. Just for saying that, we need a local governance with the capability for offering, on the one hand, a concrete way, in a really concrete commitment, a perspective, common good oriented, and at the same time to offer not only a particular measure, but to offer a local urban plan, to offer a strategy. And this strategy in Paris today is built by the convergence between different interests. The local government, the mayor, for consulting the stakeholders, consulting citizen dwellers, etc. Citizen dwellers, we have in Paris the most relevant participatory budget in a city in the world. Every year in September, the city of Paris is launching a referendum for deciding the different projects submitted by the inhabitants, yes, in order to, after the election, funding the winners of these different projects. And we have these democratic actions for involving people in this transformation. With the stakeholders, with the private sector, the city of Paris has created the new kind of program, for example, Reinventing Paris, to take different unused, yes, places in the city for offering to the private sector for submitting the new ideas for transforming, of the benefit for the private sector, and at the same time for preserving the common good. I think that the real key element is to create a strategic plan for offering different entry points, for creating a positive overlap in the different particular interests. And of course, we will have always the particular interest opposed to this transformation.
Carlos Moreno, my last question is a question coming from a virtual viewer. Imagine that one of our viewers will tell you something like this. Your theory is very interesting, sounds very good, but your theory has a huge social impact, or it might have a huge social impact. Carlos Moreno, who's behind you and behind your ideas? What would you answer to that?
Indeed. I'm totally aware that this theory, the happy proximity, could have the relevant social impact, of course. But on the one hand, I am a researcher, scientist. I'm not politician. I'm not candidate for becoming mayor or a deputy mayor. My duty, my social duty, is to explore new ideas, to rethinking for having new perspective, to take a benefit of our past as well, to consider our past, to identify the positive or negative. And after that, to elaborate with my team, I'm not alone, I have a team at Sorbonne University and today around the world, for discussing around these proposals. In reality, one of the most important benefits of this concept is not the concept itself, is the worldwide discussions opened by this proposal. We need to go beyond my proposal. I received in October 2022 a global award by United Nations, UN Habitat. The global award was the global award for the 15-minute city global initiative. And UN Nations Habitat said this award is for the 15-minute city global initiative for acknowledging the new narrative created for discussing on the essential points for transforming our cities. And I said, today, the 50-minute city concept is no more my concept. It's the concept of this worldwide community. We have researchers, academics, students, mayors, stakeholders, private sector, citizens that have embraced this concept for going beyond my initial theory. For example, we have elaborated today this prolongation of the concept for creating the new economical geography of sustainable proximity. Proximity, I said today, is the best resilience. I created another word, proxilience. Proxilience is the mix between resilience and proximity. We have today in October, Valencia, the apocalyptic images in Spain. 200 more lot of people by global warming concretely in our cities. This is totally outstanding, this situation. In Central Europe, in Hungary, in Poland, the Danube with Boris, the meteorological. Yes. In the USA, in Florida, with Milton, Ellen. We have a lot of nicknames, not for having people for a barbecue, but this is the name of the concrete impact in our cities. What is the situation when we have in Valencia, in Poland, in Hungary, this meteorological, no more roads, no more trains, no more places for supplying, etc. The best point for finding a kind of normality is this proximity. We have this proximity in the different aspects. We have the best conditions for being resilient. For that, I said recently, proximity is the best resilience, the proxilience is the way, and for that, we need to consider this new economical geography based on sustainable proximity, for having this grid for living in the best conditions. But this is the extensions. We will expand this concept. But this is no more my concept. This is the concept of the global community. In a few days, tomorrow, we will start in Cairo.
Which is not an easy.
World Urban
That's
Forum.
not an easy city.
The World Urban Forum, the 12th, this is the most significant event in the world for discussing on urbanism. This is every 2 years. And we will discuss on this question: climate crisis, social housing crisis, and proximity. This is the meeting of the global community, politics, academics, researchers, private sector, stakeholders, association of cities, for discussing and for elaborating new perspectives and new ideas.
Carlos Moreno, thank you so much for accepting this invitation, and good luck with your activity.
Thank you so much for your time and for this amazing interview.
Thank you. Tuturor celor care sunt alături de Garantat 100%, mulțumim frumos pentru încredere. Ne vedem duminica viitoare. Noapte bună!